Please welcome to the stage Executive Lead of Deloitte's CMO program, Stacy Kemp.
Thank you. Good morning. Happy New Year. I can't believe it's 2025. Also, CS is quite an interesting way to be reinducted and sort of re-enter into work after the holiday period. Thank you so much for being here. We're delighted to have you here. I am Stacy Kemp. I lead our CMO program, and our mission is to create a pipeline of marketing executives and support those that are currently in marketing or customer roles to become and grow into enterprise leaders and then put them onto boards. And because of that, we often find ourselves in the natural habitat of marketing leaders, which of course includes places like Cannes or the ANAs. But increasingly, we're finding that CES is becoming really important for marketing and customer leaders. And so this is our first program of this kind. So you are our first audience and our first program, so thank you. Very meaningful for us. And we've curated a program of three content patches that will cover everything from AI to how creativity drives commercial growth, to, of course, personalization and how to finally potentially crack the nut on that in a cost-effective way. So we're delighted to have you here. I have an amazing panel behind me, two more to come after, and our very dear friend, the esteemed CMT, who will introduce herself and the panel. But with that, welcome. We hope to see you for all three. If we don't, thank you for being here for this one, and have a great CES.
Thank you, Stacey. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Caroline Modarressy-Tehrani. People call me CMT for obvious reasons. I am a journalist, I'm a writer and a podcaster, but for the purposes of today, I am a moderator. And my hope is that I'm going to be a conduit for the questions that you have on your minds, sitting in your chairs, and as we talk to these fantastic thought leaders. So today, we're going to be talking about what success looks like in our ever-evolving landscape. And without further ado, I'm going to get the panel to introduce themselves. So Rich, if you want to start off.
So hello, everybody. I'm Rich Lehrfeld. I'm the general manager of Walmart Connect, which is Walmart's omni-channel retail media network. Yeah, I'm happy to be here. I love the boots.
Thank you, Rich. No animals were killed in the making of these boots, speaking. Gülen, yeah.
Hi, good morning. Gülen Bengi. I'm the lead Chief Marketing Officer for Mars and Chief Growth Officer for Mars Snacking. So my brilliant team takes care of our iconic brands, our consumers and customers. Happy to be here.
And good morning, I'm Sam Payne. I'm a UX lead at Google, and my team work on Google Play and a couple of other products in our ecosystem. And I'm very excited to be here too.
Thank you all. So we're trying to talk today about what it means to be creative, right? And Rich, I feel like, it's a risk-averse landscape. There's so much is changing. People have been talking out the wazoo about Gen AI. How do you sort of encourage your team, and how do you think about being creative today in this risk-averse environment?
Yeah, I mean, simplify, I kind of think about it in 4 buckets. I was thinking like 3 or 4 buckets. So I think you have to be really clear on what your purpose is. And if you can be really clear about who you are, what your corporate purpose is, and then for each initiative, what's the purpose, what's the objectives, and being really clear. The second piece, and I'll double back, the second piece is customer centricity, making sure that it's really clear about who your customer is and what value you're creating for your customer. If you create the right value, you'll be successful. I think the third is really experimentation. You have to have a culture of experimentation, being really comfortable about moving forward, trying things, not afraid to fail. And then the last is, I know we talk about art and science and creativity a lot, but data and insights into your customer, into the environment is so critical into everything you do. So if you can think about those 4 things, the experimentation, pushing innovation or pushing ideas makes it a little more comfortable. But the fear of failure is there, so you have to make sure you build an environment and a culture that everybody feels comfortable pushing the envelope.
Yeah, Sam, I mean, talk to me a little bit about fear of failure. Sorry, not but how do you sort of move past personally that sort of fear of failure, particularly when you're trying to push the envelope, right? Can you give us an example of when you've had to do that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think one of the most important things is creating a sense of psychological safety on the team so that everybody feels as though they can push things to that very edge. But then, obviously, what we try and do is put in place smart experiments that don't expose us too much when we are experimenting. I couldn't agree more with Rich's 3 or 4 buckets there. I think they're spot on, and it's exactly what we try and do. I think on the experimentation side, what becomes interesting from a Google perspective is that experiments can give you different results depending on where you are doing them in the world, right? And that then adds this extra level of complexity, which a lot of the AI work that we've been doing has started to unlock some opportunity there. You know, having systems that can get better at crafting the solutions, that can do things in isolation of having a person do it, is really interesting for that space.
And smart, you talk about smart experimentation. Gülen, I know that you have been sort of trying to be at the forefront of smart experimentation. When do you know whether or not to be sort of the leader or the first follower?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So first of all, I mean, it's an amazing place. Here we're in CES, and we're seeing that technology is redefining the way we live, right? So the way we work, the way we build brands in our case, the way we play. It's also redefining the expectations of our consumers. So they want meaningful relationships. They want, 2/3 of the consumers want personalized relationships, and they want to co-create. In fact, more than 80% of our Gen Zers want iconic brands to allow them to co-create. So today, we believe that brands stand far more than their products or experiences. So they have to know what they stand for, to your point, their unique value to the world, their distinctiveness, their differentiation. But also, today, they create two-way engagements with experiences that have no dead ends. We invite our fans, communities, consumers to co-create our brands with us, and therefore achieving personalization at scale. So how to lead and how to follow. Our experimentation is focused on, of course, fan co-creation, personalization on our iconic brands. And we believe, and I believe, that we need to lead the experimentation in a responsible manner. Otherwise, we may find ourselves on a bus more recklessly driven, right? So when you have a brilliant brand creating the platform and inviting your fans, consumers, and communities to co-create, you open it up to all possibilities, a great engagement, and you need to make sure with a combination of AI and human oversight that experiment is safely delivered.
Well, Sam, I can see you nodding there, in particular about that sort of responsibility piece. I think ethical concerns are on a lot of our minds when we're trying to push the envelope with things like Gen AI. How do you sort of put your thumb on the scale between making sure you're being responsible in these areas, but also that you're being creative, innovative? And then Rich, I'll come to you.
Yeah.
Well, I think the way that certainly my team thinks about it is that we are designing systems that are being implemented across processes, right? So there's some intention that has to go into how you build that. So to give you an example, we have built an agentic sort of experience that takes data from different sources and brings it together and then starts writing headlines that could surface in a product. We have safeguards around that to make sure that those headlines aren't things that we wouldn't want to see in that product. There could be, for example, in the App Store, a really good reason why a controversial app is trending that we just don't want to celebrate, we don't want to make a big deal of. And so right now we have these safeguards in place, and I think what Gülen was talking about is exactly right. But I think as things evolve, what's going to be interesting is how we then use the systems to check each other, which I think is really exciting and a space that we're actively trying to look at as well.
Well, and then Rich, to that point, I mean, you said before that you don't think that humans are going to be sort of out of the picture. I think that there's sort of an existential idea, right? That like, where do humans stay, and how can humans stay in control of the creative process when we keep ceding over more and more of ourselves to this new technology, which is all very exciting. We don't want to downplay the possibilities, but I think that there is an existential kind of anxiety. So, in the few minutes we have, can you solve it all for us, Rich? Is that right?
I don't know if I can solve it all, but
solve AI for us.
I totally agree. There's such a huge role for humans still today. I can't predict the future, but my belief and my understanding and my hope is that the notion of AI or technology with humans is really going to be where the power is. Even today, I'm sure we all start to experiment with AI. We have to give it a lot of prompts. We will become more curators. We will become more understanding the data, the insights of the data. Computers can do a lot, and they will do a lot more in the future. But the notion of creativity, the notion of people and humans, and the empathetic aspects of who we are, really infuse. And in the interpretation, I always say, like, I think when I think about computer technology, I just go. Someone had told me an example one time. It was a tissue example, and they were seeing data that it basically. They saw all of these communities and all of these geographies that their tissues were going through the roof. And they were looking at it and they couldn't really understand. But when you started to really look at it, it was on a train line. And so what was happening was as the flu or the cold season passed, it was just passing through that line. So computers can start to look at this stuff, and then the interpretation, and then what's the creative message that's going to go with that. I know one day maybe it can do all of that, but right now humans can take the data shows it, the interpretation of the data, and then what's the creative message on top of that. That's kind of where we are, and I'm hoping the empathetic nature of who we are as humans doesn't get replaced in the spark.
Sam, I want to come to you then, Gülen, I'll come back to you. But what Rich is kind of talking about as well is this sort of new skill that we're all having to learn, which is about prompting as well, right? So I know this is something you think a lot about. Can you give us sort of your 101 as to how you sort of instruct your teams to sort of be good at prompts and make sure that you are still in control of the process?
Well, I mean, honestly, we're learning all the time, right? We're trying new things. I think one of the most fascinating things is when you suggest in the prompt that the response should come from a specific person. So if you say, oh, answer me this maths problem, but answer it as though you're a professor of maths at MIT, you get a better... And I find that to be like one of these magical things that I think, well, what sorcery is causing this? but we, I think the principle of that then plays through in lots of really interesting ways, right? And particularly for tone and tone of voice. And then I think to Richard's point around empathy, one of the things that we're thinking about with the way that we design these prompts a lot now is how do we make sure that we're as empathetic as possible so that we avoid some of those canonical examples of bad design, right? So, an AI-powered Clippy might be someone's ideal of an experience, but it's not mine. Like, I don't want a really enthusiastic, very clever Clippy in the corner of my screen.
It's a very nice nostalgic throwback. For people who like nostalgia. It's nice.
Yeah. So, but I think that's a real danger, right? Is that just because we can do it, should we do it in that experience, and should we build it in that way? And that I think, to Richard's point around empathy, becomes a really intrinsically human part of the process, which is super exciting.
And then Gülen, can you map that onto brands for us, right? Because talk to us a little bit about infusing the empathy side of creative and the co-creation that you mentioned and personalization.
Yeah. So we do believe that brands are built with people, creativity, and technology, and together and in this order, right? So our brand teams have been redefined, actually. Of course, the usual suspects of marketers, creative, sales is still there. But now we have our data analytics and DT, digital technologies teams, and responsible AI governance teams as part of that team. And we always start with, what is the problem we want to solve, right? So what is it going to create for our consumers, for our pets in our case, pet parents, for our fans and communities. And then we go to the creative idea, and then AI helps amplify that. And I think I want to talk to you about, there are many examples, but one of the edge cases that we did do this summer in Snickers. So Snickers is an iconic brand, isn't it? It's You're Not You When You're Hungry, has been running over more than a decade. And the premise of the brand is you poke friendly fun at the hungry mistakes that your friends do. And, maybe you need a Snickers, right? So Snickers satisfies, and maybe you need a Snickers. So the expression that, in fact, the idea was brought to me in the last CES, and it became life to life this summer during the Euros, the European Soccer Championship. So we worked with one of the famous coach is called Jose Mourinho. He's called the special one because he roasts very well.
Everyone knows Jose Mourinho, right?
At least the European folks in the room. But what we did is we worked with Jose, created his generative AI likeness, and gave it over to our fans and football fans and communities in Europe over the course of the soccer championship. And you could give this AI Jose, your friend, and his hungry mistake, and he will generate a personalized roasting for your friend and send it over this video to them so that you can banter. So how do you infuse it to the brand? So the brand has to know what it stands for. It has to be so tight in the fundamentals that you can create a platform. How does it create value? Well, the value is human connection, right? And Snickers enables that by creating.
I want us to your point, Gülen, just so that people can kind of get a little taste, pardon the pun, of the Snickers campaign. I think we have a video just so that everybody can understand what it is. So let's play the video.
Oh, sound.
Advice for anyone who messed up. Except I am not Jose Mourinho. I am an authorized AI version of him. Trained on the post-match interviews to look like Jose, sound like Jose, and think like him too. Fans told me about their mate's mistake on WhatsApp, and I replied with a personalized video for them to forward on in minutes. Your friend Adam tells me you ate something that gave you bad breath. Stinker of an own goal, my friend, literally, is like bringing a skunk to the team locker room. Tom said you texted your ex. That's like pressing the self-destruct button on your spaceship just before takeoff. That's like trying to play chess with spaghetti noodles. Hello, Caroline? Your friend Fahad tells me you are stuck at a conference talking to a bunch of business leaders when you usually interview huge Hollywood stars. This sounds like a huge relegation. That is like you swapped a World Cup winner's medal for an egg and spoon race trophy. Maybe you need a Snickers?
Snickers satisfies.
So basically, we believe everybody needs a Snickers now and then.
That's a highlight of my career, by the way, being roasted by AI Jose Mourinho. I just want to let everyone know.
But you know, it takes a village to bring this to life. So Nick is one of our creative partners, is sitting there. And it took 3 LLMs. We stitched together OpenAI and 11 Labs and Sync. It took our responsibility partners, Zephyr and Respondology. It took our creative teams, marketing teams, agency teams, the governance, responsible governance board, and we had 8 AI filters. And this happened within 15 weeks, but almost half of that time was used for red teaming, what can go wrong, and updating our models. And you can imagine that when you hand over your iconic brand and open it up for millions and millions of creatives, it boosts creativity and it opens up to risk, right? And we do quantitative part of that risk is handled by AI, and the nuances are handled by 100% human oversight.
And what I find fascinating, Gülen and Rich, I'd love to kind of get your thoughts on this, is it's that sort of discussion or thought process of when to build versus when to buy, right? And sort of how do you make that determination, Rich, when you're thinking about your brand?
Yeah, I mean, first on this one, because it's fascinating. What I think is fascinating is breaking down the creative concept versus the execution, which was AI-driven. You still had a lot of creativity into the concepts and ideas and humans building those ideas. So it's pretty fascinating. For us, like for everybody, you look at cost, you look at timing, you look at the expertise of the technology. Do you have the capability to be able to execute that? Certain times you have those capabilities. It hasn't been developed, so you want to build it yourself. And other times there's experts, and you want to trust and you want to allow them to do it, and the timing that you need to be able to get it done is fast. So we are constantly weighing those sort of things. Obviously with a lot of the AI models, there's experts that this is what they do. It is very expensive to produce or develop what they're doing. So you can build your models on top of it to train it, to learn it, to learn. but you rely on partners that have the expertise, like Google and others.
Yeah, Sam, what do you
And if
think?
I can,
Oh, Gülen, yeah,
if I
please.
can build on that for a second, there is the elements where we are, it is core to our business. For example, we have a pet diagnostic business where our team actually builds on millions and millions of radiographs a model that can predict up to 2 years some kidney disease for cats, right? So it's their core business. This is a diagnostic business, so they build their model. In this case, entertainment is not our core business, right? So we rely on the models, but we tailor the models for our responsibility framework, for our brand's fundamentals, for Mars values and ethics, and of course, in general, responsible marketing values and ethics. So it's a combination whose core business you build, in our view, and the rest we tailor for our core values.
Well, and to your point as well, just so everybody knows, that sort of dynamic with the Jose and who could do it, it was very sort of strictly, there were guardrails around it, right? Like it wasn't sort of open season for anyone on YouTube. It was very much all on the Snickers platform only, right?
Yes, it was of course the first of its kind pilot, right? So we were very much on testing mode, and if something had gone wrong, we wanted to be able to pull it down, and that's why we hosted it on our URL. But in the future, as our filters and processes mature and we scale, we should be able to see it across platforms.
Yes, Sam, I mean, talk to us a little bit about that point about sort of scale as well, and as we're kind of pushing the envelope even more, 2025, like, how do you sort of approach and sort of what is your rubric, I guess, as to the guardrails that you're putting up when you're thinking about scaling these technologies?
Yeah, well, I mean, I totally agree with what you were just saying around how the name of the game is creating a unique combination of different models, data sets, overlays. It's a little bit more akin to an operating system, right? And I think for my team, you know, I look after a bunch of designers. I think what's interesting about this question of scale is designing the system that operates has not to date been a function of my team, right? But increasingly, that is becoming part of our responsibility, is to decide on something as simple as how a CMS connects to an LLM that's running a load of content, but then how it saves the things that we've run, how we can then reference them again, whether or not we review them and in what way. Like, these are all really deep system design questions that I think a lot of the designers that have design expertise can bring a huge amount of empathy, a huge amount of skill to. And you know, the feedback that I'm getting from the team is that they're feeling excited by all of these possibilities now, and as though they're growing in ways that they hadn't expected to grow in their careers, and I think that's fantastic.
And you know, on that idea of growth as well, Rich, I mean, talk to us a little bit about how you ensure that it's not gimmick, that, you know, like it doesn't become gimmick, that it's actually like you're thinking and you're ensuring that growth is sort of at the top of mind and you don't get distracted by what could be gimmick.
Yeah, I think it goes back to kind of what I was saying, which is like being really clear about your purpose, and making sure that it matches who you are and what your value that you're delivering. And the customer centricity, again, I always goes back, I think you do this based on your who your customer is and how do you add value to their lives. And if you can do that on a consistent basis, you know, you can do the gimmicky one-off sort of fun things, but if you look at that spot or the whole platform or program fits into who they are and their value proposition and what they're trying to deliver, and has consistency over time. At Walmart, when we work, so at Walmart Connect, we work with all of our brands and partners, both Google and Mars. We try to really understand who they are and what their purpose, their value proposition, and deliver platforms and programs that can deliver on an ongoing basis. They're just like stunty. And that's
Can you give us an example, Rich? I mean, like,
well,
what
we work with them on the Skittles platform, but and I was so if you guys have seen Skittles Popped, it is really like freeze-dried Skittles, and it really is part of the texture, the experimentation, the essence of what their Skittles brand is, and understanding what that is, and then we built out experiential platforms, programs that can meet their needs. And again, it's the experience of the candy, the concept, and allowing customers to experience that.
So you have to kind of you can't just go out just with one sort of thing that just lives on it by itself.
And
Yeah,
there is
Gülen.
there's a huge reason behind this, right? So first, this Snickers campaign, in the regular metrics, it has 4 times the click-through rate, and it has from 2-second watch rate to 2 minute. But those are campaign metrics. In fact, the results here is that Snickers outgrew the category by 350 basis points, right? So it is good for growth, and it turns into growth. But to Rich's point, the whole point of doing this is to connecting the consumer journey, right? So we're trying to provide the right engagements and the right offers at every relevant touch point for our consumers, personalized for each and every one of them, and bringing together all the media touch points, including the retail media, including the creators in the ecosystem, including our fans and communities. All of those touch points needs us to take the consumer data at the center, connect the functions, and enable them with data analytics. So we see real-time dynamic creative optimization improving results and experience for our consumers up to 70%. And in the past, we would build a creative idea, and it would take about 12 months to get to Arkansas, our Walmart teams, right? Today, the creative idea is optimized real time, right? Depending on the algorithms and the options that we give those algorithms.
Right, and then the measurements are at the, if you want to do it at like a funnel, like the brand level, at the consideration level, all the way down to, we can now with retail media see the actual sales on a daily basis to what's happening. So when you start to really think about that,
this idea of
retail media is relatively new, and so for our insights and our data, we can provide that on a real-time basis, which allows them to give the insights. If they need to optimize, they need to think through, again, where products should be and shouldn't be. It really does help them do that. And again, when your question on like consistency, it's not just a one-off, one thing. So.
I mean, Sam, talk to us a little bit more about that idea as well of the growth and global reach. When you're thinking about how to sort of maintain a presence in your brand presence, obviously Google, no one needs any introduction to it, but how do you think about a growth when it comes to personalization?
Well, I think what's interesting about the technology is it opens up the sort of nuanced delivery of that personalization that makes it seem genuine and authentic, right? I think part of the problem with having such a huge global brand is that you can show up in markets and maybe seem as though you're a little disconnected, or seem as though that these concepts had been thought of on beanbags in Sunnyvale or whatever. Like they can feel a little.
There's still a budget for the beanbags.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
No, beanbags are a core part of what we do.
They're virtual though, but they're beanbags.
Exactly. But I do think that what's interesting about the technology is back to that point of how you sort of layer the different elements together in this sort of operating system. You can start to take a country like India, which is an enormous market full of so many interesting, diverse groups of people, huge amounts of money, huge amounts of like consumer behavior that we need to understand, and we can start to build systems that are like having teams there. We do have teams there as well, but it's a sort of a rebalancing that I think is super interesting. We do this quite a bit with translation. There's quite a lot of translation practices in markets like India, in markets like Singapore, that don't on paper seem like good English, but are actually use of English that is very resonant with those people in those markets. And sometimes what was happening is, it would go to some central team in the US who'd say, oh, wait, this isn't grammatically correct, and it would be changed and corrected in the product. When actually it was more nuanced, more empathetic, more understanding. And I think scaled systems like this allow us to have this extra level of nuance to the way that we show up in those markets, which is super interesting.
I think that's fascinating because when you're talking about empathy as well, that's like empathy on a very deep level of sort of understanding a consumer wherever they are. And Gülen, maybe talk to us a little bit about the demographics and the way that you think about changing demos and reaching, different market demos. And also sort of reaching new generations, right? Like Gen Z, it's already on its way out, right? It's like Gen Beta now, right? Beta, we're going to say. So, how do you think about reaching and empathetically reaching those audiences around the world?
Yeah, I think we spend all our time thinking about this, right? So what is the world going to look like in 2040 and beyond? And then you backtrack. And there are a few things that we see. First of all, The demographic shifts, as you mentioned, is there's an urbanization. The next billion middle income generation is going to come. 4 out of 5 people will be in Asia. There will be bifurcation. Still, the mature markets will have half of the consumption, and then the rapid growth markets having the other half. And then the generations, right? So 90% of Generation Z is gamers, right? And what does a gamer do? They co-create their game, right? They don't want to be talked at. They don't want to be innovated at, right? So they want to co-create what they consume and what they experience. That is how we think about fan and community co-creation. In fact, Caroline, we did talk about our first ever gaming brand created by gamers for gamers is launching as we speak. It's called Respawn. We have a joint venture partner called Razer, whose whole job is they're a gamer's lifestyle brand. So how we build that brand is so cool. We pull gamers into an arena, or the older folk would say like an arcade, right, makeshift. And then our R&D people, while they play, our R&D people would bring products and packaging, and they talk about it, they experience, and they say, okay, this is too difficult to open, or this makes my hands sticky, or this is, I can't see it, or, you know, they iterate together, and they build the product together. And then, of course, there's tremendous ownership by avid gaming community to promote and to talk about the products that they co-created. The engagement is also built together with gamers, and because it is built by gamers, for gamers, it is on track to be one of our biggest brand launches in the last couple of decades because of that empathy, because our sole objective is to be what the gamers need, and who better from the gamers, but the gamers to know that. Right?
And on that point, you know, I mean, like, you know, you talking about gaming as well, Gülen, you are a gamer, aren't you?
I am.
Yeah.
I am, okay.
She is a gamer. So do you, in that room, are you cognizant, and are you sort of thinking about, you know, demographic of that gamer? Are you thinking about diversity? Are you thinking about inclusion and who is actually helping kind of design?
Yes, yes. I mean, it's, we do this across the world, of course. I mean, we hold these Respawn labs in the US, in China, across the world, where we're launching the brands, first of all, to represent the communities. Gamers community is quite international, and it's across borders, but there are nuances, of course, in terms of their preferences, so we co-create together. And then there are nuances of avid gamers and types of games and times of gaming that they bring. For example, just a very simple one. Everybody would think about energy and focus when we think about gaming. But there's a very real need of, after gaming for 4 or 5 hours, you need to wind down and to be able to go to sleep. So when we talk to gamers, so they give these little insights that perfects our range. So we not only have focus or energy mints in this case, and gum in this case, but also we have the wind down and relax variant, which is very much appreciated by our community.
And it's a different kind of data set. I want to talk a little bit, we've got about 5-ish or so minutes left. I just want to talk a little bit about the sort of overwhelming amount of data that, you know, we now have at our disposal, Rich. And, you know, there is so much data. Obviously you're making data-driven decisions, but how do you sort of balance the data with your own creative intuition?
Yeah, you have to. It's the art and science of marketing, the art and science of even at Walmart merchandising, and supporting all the partners. You have to know where people are going to come in. And I talk a lot about this balance of humans and technology a lot, and what's the role of each that are going to be playing in that. There is a role, obviously, for lots of automation and lots of technology in everything we do, whether we're supporting our advertisers or suppliers and sellers in their ability to create, their ability to optimize, their ability to understand the data and how to apply the data. But the humans are still part of this process, and allowing them to understand what is happening and then how to actually build the right campaigns. But it is a fine line, and I wish I would tell you it has to be this or has to be this or has to be this. But as we move forward and as we are using new technologies, it is going to be part of how humans and how technology intersect.
But for you
supporting
personally,
them.
what do you do? I mean, do you sort of like, give us your, open your notebook, and then what would you sort of do? Your 3 buckets or your 3 funnels? I like your thing of threes. I like rule of threes. But so what do you, when you're sitting down, you're looking at the data and you're thinking about your own creative kind of, the wanting to make sure that you're as innovative as possible, what are you writing down? What are you sort of telling your team to do?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, you have to stay up to speed on like what is happening and what's the interpretation of what's happening. It's easy to say, okay, this does this. If you guys are, I'm sure you're coming here, you're seeing all the different technologies. It's not just the what it is, but like what does it do for you, and what is it doing for us in supporting our clients and our customers. The second thing I would say, it goes, so really understanding what it does, how is it going to be applied to help promote or support our customers, how it supports our end customer, how it supports our partners, which are our customers or suppliers, and how it supports Walmart. And those are some of the things that we think through. And then ultimately, is it adding efficiency? Is it adding business value? Or is it doing other things that are helping us promote for the future?
Sam, what do you think about that? And sort of how you sort of encourage your own team to keep playing in the sandbox?
How we play with it. Well, I mean, I think the scale opportunity that's opened up with the technology, I particularly like this, that you can try and be a little spicier, I think, with the experimentation, right? Because you can have 5 or 6.
What level of spice? Scoville it for us.
All scales. I mean, I think it's up to the brief and the project. But I mean, you can run 5 different versions of a thing, right? And I think, we are coming from a place of A/B testing and optimization and trying to get to the solution. And actually, the solution isn't always one thing, right? I think it's back to that point I was trying to make around designing the system. Having writers in particular who are playing around with tone, and they have these different tones that they're then experimenting with, and they're training an agent within a model to be able to write in that style. You quickly find the edges, and sometimes they go off the deep end, but as long as you design the experiment in a way where that's not too much exposure, actually I think it can be quite liberating from a creative perspective.
Well, on that note, is sort of just this idea of when do you know to keep pushing, even if there might be sort of some stickiness or some resistance from consumers? Gülen, when do you know sort of, oh, actually, well, Rich, hang on, you sort of, you sighed there, you audible.
No, it was more like, it's like, how do you know? How do you know you push too far, I guess, when everything goes wrong? And I
guess, do you sometimes give, it's sort of like a bit of a Mary Poppins, because obviously I'm living embodiment of a Mary Poppins up here, but sort of, when do you know to keep sort of giving somebody a bit of the medicine, because actually you know that it's sugar?
Well, again, I think it goes back to the art and science, which is sort of, if you say close to the purpose and customer-centric, is everything I was saying. Ultimately, are you generating what your objectives are? And if that objective is that, am I generating the brand awareness that you need, or the consideration? Are you getting people to talk about and the excitement happening in the marketplace? There's so much data that we can now, at our fingertips, to be able to understand, are things working? Is it working in the right way or in the wrong way? Is it going in a bad way? You see that example on the Snickers, it could go in a bad way. You have to build the parameters, right? Humans are prompting and trying to actually elicit probably some negative, and you probably could talk about that, but you have to build the parameters. That's where it will go in the wrong direction.
Yeah, I mean, there were 5,000 words and concepts after the red teaming that we put into the restrictive zone, and the AI filters would filter those out, and then humans in the loop would nuance them out, right? So you are right. We need to build the parameters. We need to make sure that we put the guardrails, and then ask our fans and communities to co-create and amplify the creativity, not the negativity, right? So it's the creativity that works.
Well, in the last minute we have, I want to just ask each of you how you would encourage everybody in the room to think about future-proofing their brands, whether that's their own, personal brand or, the brand that they may represent. Sam, what are a couple of sort of things that you want people to keep top of mind that you'd want them to write down?
I think the thing that has served us best has been trusting all of the people on the team to play with the technology and apply it in their roles and experiment with how it can help them and achieve the things that they want to do, and then listening to the team and the feedback that we're getting from the people. I think there can be a tendency with technology like this to have a slightly structured or process-driven or slightly top-down implementation strategy for how we're going to plug this in or use that thing, and actually going to the team and saying, let's see. You tell us what's it going to look like. That's been really good for us.
Rich.
Yeah, I totally agree. You guys are going to see so much technology over the next couple of days. Everything is infused with AI. That'll be the buzzword. And I would just say we're at the beginning stages. I know you see some graphs like we're actually on the up stages, but we are at the initial stages of so much of the application of these LMMs and other areas that feel comfortable still experimenting. That you're not left behind. That you're not feeling like, boy, I'm missing out. You're not. We're at that phase, but you have to stay up to speed. You have to experiment. You have to try things. You have to push the boundaries. Sometimes knowing that it might go a little off, hopefully not too far off for you, but experiment.
And Gülen, last word to you.
Yeah, so first of all, we need to remember that we build brands to create growth and value for our consumers and communities and fans, how you describe your brands. So what is the problem we're trying to solve is this. It is timeless. I encourage everyone, I do that myself, go to school every day, learn, be curious, because our job is to understand the possibilities that is created with AI building into all sorts of things, creating opportunities for inclusion, disabilities inclusion, connection, creative storytelling, so much opportunity. Understand it enough so that we can bridge it back to the real world for the benefit of our consumers, for our brands and our communities. We need to be able to shape the choices and make it work at scale. So one of our biggest responsibility as a global consumer brands is we have such a large reach. I mean, every second, 1,000 of our snacks are eaten, or every day we serve 1 million pets. So at scale, to be able to do that, we need to make sure that we understand the possibilities, shape the choices, and make it work responsibly.
Well, Sam, Gülen, and Rich, thank you very, very much.
Thank you.